This is your first Q&A time writing at 240 words per minute. You're only 240 Q&A time writing. Your proper names are Grace, Mr. Platt, Jade, Mr. Sid Platt, Officer Wall, Z28, Z28 Camaro, GT, Walmart, MRI, True Medical Imaging, Dr. Gutzman, and San Antonio. Ready? Ready? Okay, let me back up a second. When you took off with the truck, at that point in time, was the truck up on top of your car?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what was Grace doing at this time when you walked over to call Mr. Platt?
She was checking on my daughter, Jade.
Okay, you heard Mr. Platt say that the young lady came over and waved him down. Did that happen?
I don't recall or remember.
Okay, you remember doing it?
Yes.
All right, and what happened next there at the scene?
I had told Mr. Sid Platt that he had wrecked into me and that I noticed he had bloodshot eyes and reeked like beer. I had told him that we needed to swap information and call the cops.
Okay, and did somebody call the police?
Yes.
All right, and we've already heard from Officer Wall. You disagree with anything that he said happened?
No, sir.
In terms of checking out, Mr. Platt?
No, sir.
Okay, were you there and saw the field sobriety test going on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me ask you this. At some point in time, did at least one of the troopers come over and talk to you all?
Yes, sir.
I assume he asked you for stuff like your driver's license?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and did he ask you what happened?
He asked us what happened. He asked us if we were okay, and we said yes. And he said if we needed an ambulance, and we said no.
Okay, next question. And how much time did the trooper spend with you before you went over to deal with the intoxicated Mr. Platt?
Like a good minute or so.
Okay, so about a minute?
Yes.
And then how long was he over there with Mr. Platt doing the field sobriety test?
Like for a good while.
Okay, it was like 30, 40 minutes, wasn't it at least?
Yes.
Okay, so tell us about how you felt, and now I'm focusing on your back. How did your back feel there at the scene of the collision?
At the time at the scene, I didn't feel anything because my blood was pumping and I was like scared because I was worried about my daughter. So it didn't really like get my attention until I went to work.
Okay, by the way, what year and model was this car?
It was a 1992 Z28 Camaro.
Okay, you loved that car, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
Did it have the factory steering wheel in it?
No, sir.
What kind of steering wheel did it have when you got it?
It had a 3-spool GT steering wheel that was popular for those cars back in the 90s.
Okay, somebody else had put that in, right?
Yes, sir.
And that GT steering wheel, it doesn't have an airbag in it, does it?
No, sir.
Okay, so whenever it was, tell us, when did you start to realize that you had some problem with your back?
When I had went back after my days off after the incident. I had went back to work for one whole hitch, and I had noticed day by day that my back was hurting, but it didn't bother me. I was just thinking that I was probably sore from the accident, that it would get better. And then throughout the days through work, my back pain started increasing and increasing.
Okay, so had you ever hurt your back before this wreck?
No, sir.
All right, so tell us about how long you then continued to work with your company.
I worked one whole job and I came on days off again and my back was still hurting. And I was just thinking that maybe it was just pains that I'm having from work, from heavy lifting and being sore all the time and probably sore from the wreck. And I went back on the job again and it was distracting me from my capability of doing my job, and my grandfather and my uncle noticed.
Okay, so what did you do eventually?
I decided that I was going to try and finish the job as much as I can before or after. And I couldn't make it, and I told my grandfather that I couldn't hack it anymore, that my back was hurting, that I couldn't come to work, so I stopped.
Do you have any doubt in your mind as to what caused the pain and problems you had with your back at that time?
No.
What caused your pain and problems? When did they first start?
Probably from the wreck.
Okay, well, do you have any doubt in your mind about that?
No.
All right, so did you eventually go to a doctor?
Yes, sir.
Who did you go to?
I went to the chiropractor.
All right, and how did you hear about them?
I had heard it from a family member. I don't remember who it was, but they told me that we have chiropractor clinics here, and I went to the first one that I saw. And I always see the one going towards Walmart, so that's the one that I went to.
Okay, had you ever been to a chiropractor before?
No, sir.
But you heard they're good for back injuries.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what did they do for you at the chiropractor?
They did back therapy, massages, and stretches.
Okay, and as soon as they examined you, did you tell them about the accident?
Yes, sir.
Okay, as soon as they examined you, did you send off for an MRI?
Yes, sir.
Okay, did they tell you what that was and why they were doing it?
No, sir. They told me just to go get an MRI at True Medical Imaging.
Okay, so after you got your MRI, did you find out you had a problem in your back?
Yes, sir.
What did you find out?
I had a herniated disc.
Okay, so what did they do next for you?
They continued to do treatments and therapy to stop the hurting from the back. And it continued and it didn't work. And then my chiropractor referred me to Dr. Gutzman in San Antonio.
Okay, and did they also try injections on your back?
Yes, sir.
All right, and I know you're not a medical doctor, but just from your perspective, what was that like?
In my opinion, I don't know because I was out when I would get the injections.
Okay, so they'd have to put you under to do the injection.
Yes.
But you understood and they explained to you that they were going to get a needle and actually inject steroid fluid and painkillers into your spine, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's why they have to have you out?
Yes, sir.
Because if you move a little bit, they told you you could be paralyzed. Did you get any relief from the injections?
No, sir.
Okay, so what did they do next?
We tried.
This is your first Q&A time writing at 225 words per minute. Your proper names are Mr. Baker, FM 86, Sandy Hills, Texas, White Sands, Rule 11 Agreement, Exhibit number 6, Cross Plaintiffs, Exhibit number 6, Mr. James, number 6, Rule 11, Grays Drug, Blue Ridge, Carson, Grays, I-10, Exhibit number 1, Cross Plaintiffs, Trial, Exhibit number 1, Bill Wallace, Mr. Strum, Mr. Bill Wallace, Slam Dunk Oil, Bill, Brian, James, and 27.5.
Mm-hmm.
Ready? Mr. Baker, good morning.
Good morning.
Where do you live?
Where do I live?
Yeah, where do you live?
I live at 4530 FM 86, Sandy Hills, Texas. That's about 10 miles from White Sands out in the country.
And how long have you been practicing law?
Since 1985. I taught college, university, 15 years before that.
And do you have basically a personal injury trial practice? Is that correct?
Primarily.
And during those 31 years, you've never ever had a client sign a Rule 11 agreement, have you?
I never have.
You understand the effect of a Rule 11 agreement, don't you?
It's an agreement between one attorney and another.
And you know that by executing a Rule 11 agreement that agrees to settle a case, you are binding your client to that settlement, don't you?
Sir, I cannot bind my client to a settlement. The case settlement authority, it always remains with the client, never with the attorney.
Let's look at exhibit number 6, which we've talked about in this case. Can you see that?
I can't see it.
I'll get you a copy. And this is cross plaintiff's exhibit number 6. Exhibit number 6 is your contract between you and Mr. James, correct?
Yes, sir.
And if you look at number 6, paragraph 6, Mr. James is giving you the power of attorney to execute all documents, including drafts and releases. Do you see that?
Yes.
That would include a Rule 11, correct?
It would not give me settlement authority.
But this document would give you the authority to execute a Rule 11 settling this case, would it not?
Provided that that did settle his case.
Okay, and you referred Mr. James to several doctors, right?
I did.
And Mr. James gave you the authority to hire those doctors for him, right?
Yes. He and I talked about his appointments and doctors and specialists and so forth.
Okay, and he never complained that you didn't have authority to do that, did he?
No, he didn't.
And you sent him to Gray's Drug in Blue Ridge for his medication.
It was one of several drugstores where we had an account that billed us, but my client could get his medication.
Okay, and he never complained about you sending him over there for his medication, did he?
Well, I didn't really send him there. There's a list of pharmacies, and that's the one. It must have been convenient to him that he chose.
Well, you know he lived in Carson, right?
That's right.
Okay, and how far is Gray's from Carson?
Well, I'm not sure where Gray's is in Blue Ridge, but it's 37 or 38 miles on I-10 from Carson to Blue Ridge.
And you were in contact with Mr. James throughout this process, correct?
That's right. I knew his cell phone number.
Okay, and you talked to him about his case throughout from the time that he hired you.
I did.
All right. About how many times would you say that you talked to him?
I don't really recall. Like I said, he's the only client in 30 plus years that I've ever remembered his cell phone number.
Okay. Can you remember his cell phone number today?
I think I can. 908-675-3124.
Okay. Now, during that entire time that you talked on the phone, Mr. James says you never ever talked about numbers. Is that true?
We didn't talk about numbers.
You never talked about numbers in all that time?
We didn't talk about numbers.
Let you look at exhibit number 1. Now, let me hand you a copy of the list.
Yes.
This is going to be easier for you to see. This is Cross Plaintiff's Trial Exhibit number 1. And did you send that to Bill Wallace?
Did I send this list of medical bills that were introduced to Bill Wallace on February 12th, 2014? I did.
Okay, let's look at page 1. And is this your fax cover sheet?
Well, it's not a fax cover sheet, but that's my letterhead, right?
Okay, is there not a fax cover sheet on the top, on the front?
There's not on this one.
Okay, it's missing?
And I assume it was faxed.
You see that this is fax that says page 2 of 83?
Okay.
Okay.
But there should have been a cover sheet regardless.
Okay, let me see. Mr. Strum seems to think it's the last page. It's the last page.
Okay.
Okay, so you sent this fax to Mr. Bill Wallace, who was representing Slam Dunk Oil, correct?
He was the only slam dunk oil lawyer I ever dealt with.
Okay, and you see down here over in the bottom where it says urgent, and that's checked.
It is?
What was urgent about this communication you received by Bill Wallace?
Sir, I think I zealously represent my clients, and I don't let any grass grow under my feet, so I'm wanting an answer.
Okay, so you were looking at some kind of answer from Bill.
Right.
Okay, let me have you look at page 2. Now, you represented Brian James, and you're telling Bill that. Had you talked to Bill on the phone before this?
Oh, I probably talked to him several times the previous days, but I don't know exactly what day.
Okay, and you made an offer here of settlement in the amount of $27,500. Do you see that?
That is true. That basically came from my understanding of what Bill said he could do based on the medical data that I sent him. That's what he told me on negotiations, and I wrote it.
But it doesn't say anything about I'm accepting your offer of $27,500, does it? It says this is your offer of settlement.
Right. He has to accept it. Right.
Is that correct, sir?
Can you clarify your question?
Sure. This is your offer of settlement. It doesn't say anything about here, Bill, we've been talking about this number and this is what I've come up with.
Okay. Bill and I had a lot of conversations on the telephone prior to me writing this letter.
Where did you come up with this $27,500?
Basically, it went out to Bill.
Well, did you talk to Mr. James about this?
I did not, but Mr. James was anxious to get an offer. What is a company going to do? And I want to see it.
And you were talking to Mr. James during this period of time? This is your second Q&A time writing at 225 words per minute. Your proper names are English, Norristown, Alfred, Alberta, Michael, and Italian. Ready? Your mother could not read English?
That is right.
Who read it to her?
We all read it to her. I did.
Were you convinced that she understood what was in the writing?
I think she understood.
Do you recall what day of the week this was?
I think it was a Sunday. I am not sure. I wouldn't swear on it.
Your mother had been very sick, had she not?
Well, she always was ailing.
As a matter of fact, at the time of the trial in Norristown, which lasted several days and concluded on April 10, when she was in court in a wheelchair, wasn't she?
Yes, sir.
While she lived at Alfred's home, was she bedridden or confined to her room?
No, she used to go down in the parlor most of the time watching television.
What was the occasion for the visit on this particular day?
Well, they always come down on weekends. Maybe every 2 or 3 weeks they would come down.
How long did they remain there?
All day.
What time did they arrive?
About 9 or 10 or 11 o'clock. No special time.
In the morning?
Yes, sir.
What time did they leave that evening?
Pretty late at night, 10:30 or 11 o'clock.
Who was present?
My children, my aunt.
Tell the names of everybody who was present in your home on that day.
Well, my mother, my brother, Alfred, his wife.
What is his wife's name?
Alberta, and son Michael.
How old is he?
He is about 6 now, I think, and my 2 daughters,
How old are they?
10 and 13.
How long had your mother been there with your brother Alfred and your sister-in-law Alberta before a conversation took place as to this paper?
I think we started to talk about it at the dinner time while we were eating dinner.
That was about what time?
Around noontime, I guess.
You ate your dinner during the midday?
Yes.
This paper was written in your home, or had it been prepared before?
No, it was written in my home.
In your presence?
Yes, sir.
By your sister-in-law?
Yes, sir.
Did she have anything from which she copied?
Not that I recall.
She just made it up out of her head?
Well, my brother was telling her what my mother intended to do, and she wrote it out.
He didn't dictate it to her, did he?
Not that I know of.
In other words, whatever appears on that paper came out of her own mind and out of her own knowledge.
Well, my mother would tell us what she wanted to do, and we would tell her what to write down.
I repeat my question. The writing which appears on that paper was not dictated to your sister-in-law by anyone, was it?
I think my brother told her what to write down.
Your brother told her what your mother wanted to do. Is that the story?
Yes.
Did your sister-in-law copy that language from any paper that you saw, or did she get it out of her own head?
No.
Did she get it out of her own head?
My brother told her what to say, what to write down.
Did he tell her every word to write down?
I don't recall that, sir.
You recall that she did write it.
Yes, sir.
Did she write it in your presence?
Yes, sir.
Why is it you can recall all of that, but you can't recall whether he told her to write every word?
I didn't know about every word.
Did he tell her most of the words to write?
I guess so.
Will you answer that question, please?
What is that, sir?
Did he tell her some words?
Yes, I guess he did.
Do you remember what the weather was like on that day?
No.
You don't remember whether it was clear or raining?
No.
Do you remember whether the sun was shining?
I don't remember, sir.
Your mother couldn't write English or understand English, could she?
No. She couldn't write Italian either.
She couldn't sign her name. She had to write a mark.
That is right.
On numerous occasions in former years, she had always made a mark to indicate her wishes. Is that correct?
Yes.
That paper upon which that writing appears came from where?
I think from the school kids' books.
One of your children's school books?
Yes, sir.
On this date, your mother was pretty feeble, wasn't she?
Feeble?
Yes. Didn't she have to use a cane to get about?
I don't remember. She used a cane, but I don't think she had one that day. I don't remember right. She could have had.
Did she have to be helped in the house?
Oh, yes, up the steps. Always had.
Did she have to be helped out of the automobile?
Certainly.
This signing occurred about 11 days after the conclusion of the trial in Norristown. Is that correct?
I don't remember.
You don't remember when the trial took place?
I don't know whether this happened before the trial or after the trial. I couldn't tell you that. I know this happened, but when, I don't know.
Had the visit made by Alfred and your mother and his wife been planned, or was it a sudden visit?
No, they always called up.
They called beforehand?
Yes.
Said they were coming up?
Yes.
I am not quite clear on this, but will you go through this and tell exactly how this paper was executed by your mother, how the witness signed, what part of the house it took place in, and what occurred?
Well, we were talking about it.
Where were you sitting when you were talking?
In the kitchen, eating. In the dining room, eating. We were talking about it. I don't know who suggested writing it down and making it legal-like so nobody could touch it.
It was somebody who suggested that?
I believe somebody suggested that. I might have done it myself. I don't recall that.
Go on.
My mother told me all the trouble Alfred had gone through, so that must have been during or after the trial. He went through a lot of trouble and expense. She thought she would leave him that money in